Hi, and welcome to a Hero Arts video. Today I'm going to show you how to make an acetate photo card just for the holidays. This card features a scenic portrait mounted onto a card with an acetate overlay stamped with snowflakes, a stamped tree, and greeting. For the sake of saving time, I've already printed my photograph, mounted it onto cardstock, and onto a powder note card. Next, I'll open my acetate card, and I like to run my thumbs across the seam to flatten it out. I'm going to be overstamping onto this card, so I'm going to place a piece of paper underneath to protect my work surface. Next, I'll use some large post-it notes to place on the back side of the card as a mask. By letting the post-it note hang off the side of the card, it helps keep my card in place without it bouncing back up at me while I try to stamp. And now with my acetate sitting flat, I'm ready to stamp. I've already placed my cling stamps onto my stamp press, and now I'll just ink them up with cotton white StazOn. I like to re-ink my StazOn about once every week if I use it a lot, or if it sits for about a month, you may want to re-ink it again. So tap the ink onto the stamps, and if you know me, I always like to tap a little extra. Flip the stamp press over, align it, and press down. This is the best way to stamp your acetate, as you won't have any slippage. And now I'll re-ink to get another stamp image. If you notice when I go to stamp, part of the stamp goes onto the post-it note. If you don't have a stamp press, the post-it note does help keep you from sliding, as part of the stamp does catch onto the paper rather than all on acetate. If you notice, I kind of walk my fingers around just to make sure that I have really good pressure on the entire surface. This way I get a great image. Now that my card's all stamped, I'll just peel it up from the backing paper. I'll remove my post-it notes. And now you can see I have a nice clean crisp line from masking it off. And since my StazOn is good and re-inked, I'm going to let this card set aside to dry for a little bit. So now I'm ready to stamp my tree, and with the help of another stamp press I have my tree in place. And I have a Pumpkin Patch Q inks, which are made for Hero Arts, and I'm using the olive green pastel ink for the tree. And just tap it on, and the Qs are great because a small ink pad allows you to get it into the small areas. And there's a nice brown in here that I'll use for the tree trunk. It's just the one below the green. And I can go ahead and tap that onto the tree trunk. I've cut up strips of paper to go ahead and stamp on, and if you're doing batch cards, you can go ahead and cut up several at one time and just stamp away. So again, I'm just pressing down, kind of walking my fingers around, lifting up, and I'm just going to stick my thumbnail underneath and release it, and there's my tree. Now I'll just remove my tree and put my greeting on to the stamp press. And what's great also about the stamp press is it has the lines, so you can go ahead and line up your words. Give that a good press. And I have another small piece of paper here. I'm going to go ahead and use the brown that I used for the tree trunk and ink up my greeting. And for my words, I tap a little extra ink on so I make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, now I'm ready to stamp. So I'll just turn this over. And this is where the lines really help. I can line up my greeting, give it a good press, walk my fingers around a little bit, and lift up. And now all my stamping's complete, and I have all my pieces to put together. I have some twine here that I'm going to place between my message and some cardstock. So I will start by just adding some foam squares to my cardstock, and I'll just put about 6 pieces on at the ends and then in the center, but I'm going to leave room in the middle for the twine so that I can run it through easily. You could certainly do the same thing with ribbon, just leave yourself enough room in between the foam squares. I like using the small EK foam squares, but if you have larger ones, you can always cut them in half with your scissors, especially Teflon scissors, to accommodate the size you need. So now I'll just remove the backing to the foam squares so I can attach my message. I'll just lay the twine in the center, and then I'll just place my message on top. And just give it a little press where you have the foam squares, and that should do it. And as you can see, I can still arrange my twine where I need to, so I can adjust it once I get it onto my card. So now I'll go ahead and crease my acetate card. If it's a little tacky, just beware of the areas. And I'll add a little bit of tape onto the back of my card, and you could use a glue dot here if you wanted to. So this is the only place that the card will be attached to the acetate card. The front of the acetate won't be attached to the card in case somebody wants to remove the picture that's underneath. So what we'll do is start building the front of the card, and the twine will wrap around the front cover and hold everything in place. So with some adhesive on the back of the message, I'll just go ahead and place this onto the front of the acetate and press it in place. So next I'll start cutting out my Christmas tree, and I like to use a small scissor to get around the small areas. My rule of thumb is small scissors for small areas, large scissors for large areas. So I'm going to leave a little white border around, so I'll just go ahead and start snipping from the tree trunk up, and I'll move my way around the whole entire piece. And I'll be cutting off the star at the top because I'll be adding some gemstones to finish this off. Okay, so now I've pretty much cut my tree out, and I'll be adding some foam squares to the back of the tree as well. Let's just flip this over. And about 4 foam squares should do it. If you have larger ones, you can go ahead and cut some in half to give yourself more pieces. This is just to lift it up a little bit. And when I get down to the trunk, I'll make sure that I cut one smaller so that it won't be so bulky. Okay, now that I have that ready, I'll show you just how to wrap the twine around. It just goes around the whole front cover of the underneath powder card, so the card still opens regular. Just lift this up and show you wrap it around. The bow that I'm going to tie is going to go on top of the tree, so I'll just kind of leave an opening, and I'll go ahead and peel my backing off my foam tape, and then I can place it onto my card. I've placed the tree to where it'll just overlap onto the greening just a little bit. Go ahead and press that down in place once you like your position. And now you'll want to pull the twine taut and just go ahead and tie a simple bow. When I tie my bows, I do one loop, wrap it around, pull it through the loop, and tighten. Then I like to readjust my loops and my strings before I snip off the ends. And once you're done, you can go ahead and clip off the ends with your scissors. And to keep the bow really secure, you could always put a little dab of glossy accents in the center of the bow. And finally, I'll add some finishing touches with some clear gemstones. And I like to snip in between the gemstones with my scissors to release them from the line of glue. And once I've done that, then I'll use my pokey tool to peel them up off the plastic. So just lift them up and place them onto the tree. And I like to follow the pattern of the dots that are already on the tree. Makes it really easy. And you don't have to embellish a whole lot, just to give it a little bit of shine. And if you wanted, you could also add glossy accents or liquid pearls to the other dots of the tree to fill them in. And here's the finished card. Be sure to visit us at heroarts.com for more card making inspiration, and check out our photo holiday cards on cardstore.com. Thanks for watching.